So I'm here with one of the founders of SilverStripe, a open source CMS, and just wanted to chat a little bit about what SilverStripe is and what you guys have been doing with Summer of Code. So to start off with, could you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Hi, my name's Sigurd Magnusson. I'm over here in San Francisco for a couple of weeks to be at the Google Summer of Code Mentor Summit. And yeah, so we started SilverStripe as a web development company about 7 years ago. Out of high school actually, with a couple of friends, and we've grown that into a business of about 20 people. In doing so, we've been making a whole lot of quite exciting PHP 5 based websites, and at the start of this year, the toolkit which we've been using to produce our sites, we put out there in the open as a freely available BSD license open source platform. So there's two parts to the SilverStripe system. There's Sapphire, which is kind of like a framework, and it's a bit of a play on, I guess, Ruby on Rails. So it's kind of like Ruby on Rails for PHP 5, using a lot of the object-oriented MVC framework, that kind of stuff. And then on top of that is an application, which is a SilverStripe CMS. And that is very deliberately a system that is designed for people who want to manage a site rather than be a technical developer.
So CMS is a little bit of an overloaded term these days.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone says what they have is a CMS. WordPress, some people call it CMS. So what does a CMS mean for you?
Well, I have to completely agree with you. CMS is a very vague term. I mean, to me that sounds a lot like saying we have a vehicle, and you're saying, well, you know, does that mean it's a truck? Does it mean it's an aeroplane? You know, that sort of thing. So I completely agree. So we've taken a lot of the, from the different large-scale popular systems that worked really well to solve the sort of problems that we had in building sites. So for instance, the simplicity of installation and adding pages on something like WordPress really appealed to us. At the same time, the ability to be a developer and customize and modularize the system also appealed to us. So we've taken things so that it's a lot bigger than, say, like a blogging system, a lot more kind of extensible than that. But at the same time, it's not like an 8-step process to add a page.
Very cool. So why did you decide to open source it?
Well, there's a number of reasons. So some of them are completely to do with open source, and some of them to do with our business. So I had been using open source for, I don't know, since I was a teenager trying to play Quake on a 486. And yeah, we'd been using open source, so it seemed like a really good idea to pass it back. You know, so there was a whole bunch of reasons like that. Another one would obviously be because, you know, we felt that the quality of the software would be a lot greater. You know, now it's only about sort of 6-8 months after it's been released. As soon as we do a release candidate, we're having hundreds of people download it and show us bugs and things like that. So the community of people around there are benefiting from it, but actually our direct chargeable clients benefit from that code too, right? So there's a bunch of really kind of, I guess, altruistic things there, as well as the code quality, but also for our business, I mean, it really helps with our marketing credibility. So, you know, for instance, we spend about 90% of our time you know, building jobs, and then about, you know, 10% of the time working the open source project. So it really helps for us to be able to have, you know, the open source project there kind of help us win the sorts of jobs that give us the actual ability to make open source. It's sort of a yin-yang kind of scenario. They all sort of come together and support each other.
So have you hired some of the people to your company from watching them, you know, working on the open source project and seeing them successful in the community, and that's how you foster hiring some of those guys, or?
A little bit. I mean, it's still early days yet. The thing that we're actually working with at the moment is the fact that we actually do have people who are good enough to do that, and we're just trying to work out how do we actually take them on board. So we've had a couple of people actually say, yes, we'd love to work with you, and we would say, yeah, well, look, you've demonstrated that kind of stuff. So we're working through that. Ultimately, yeah, we've got a nice community of people who are both, you know, providing code and then also answering questions in the forum, which is really, really great, because to begin with, when we opened up the forum, the burden was on people like me and the other founders to answer every single question. So it's really fantastic now that, you know, even half a year on, you know, the sort of bottom half of the questions are all being kind of figured out by themselves. So that's really great.
Yeah, cool. So that kind of leads us into the Summer of Code.
Yeah.
How did you participate this year? What kind of stuff did did you mentor? What kind of people did you mentor? What kind of stuff did they do?
Right. So we were absolutely, completely astounded and privileged and really appreciated the whole fact that we had 10 students, and with that we had a little bit of a liberty to put people on both kind of core things that we'd always wanted to get around to, a few things which had been vocally asked for in the community, and a few things that we just kind of were a little bit more experimental, but have actually turned out to go really, really well. So for instance, some of the core stuff we wanted to do was get it away from purely working with a MySQL database. And that's a very tough project, so it's actually going. So that guy is still working on that project as I speak. So he's getting it working on Postgres and Microsoft SQL Server, for instance. Then we had another guy, a guy Elijah from Alabama. He was working on just general around-the-board usability fixes and just making things like, so if you put your mouse over, say, a delete button, then the background color would automatically go red, so it just kind of gives you a little bit of a warning that, hey, maybe this action has some kind of repercussion. All the way through to just, doing a whole lot of great stuff with Ajax and, I guess really just demonstrating that an open source project can actually be pretty slick too. We also did a bunch of stuff with Google APIs like sitemaps, AdWords, the maps, all sorts of great stuff there. So it was really, really awesome. And as an example of what the community around, we had quite a lot of European people participate in our forum, and they were really, really wanting translation systems. So the website backend, so where like a site administrator is using it, they want to be able to translate that into, say, French or Spanish and so on. So we're actually going to be releasing later this month, a beta of it in Spanish, in German, and French, I believe. Yeah. So
the community just got together and did that.
Yeah. Well, they asked for that, and then we're working with them, and we've kind of have to. What we're going to do is put the translation system out there so that people can then put in, the other, couple of hundred languages. So we did the back end as well as the front end. So like, the actual public-facing side of the site, and then we had to make some tools so that, let's say you have translated the entire site. Well, you put some more stuff into it, then some of the other languages are now out of sync, and so you need to kind of reports and things like that. So yeah, we talked to a couple of other organizations who had been doing translation systems to kind of get their insights. So yeah, so I mean we had 10 fantastic projects. It was really awesome.
Cool. How did you go about choosing these projects?
So I came up with 5 original ideas to begin with, because we needed to do that for the application to Google. It became apparent pretty soon that we were going to get way more than 5 applicants and probably more than 5 slots. So then I worked with the students to sort of see where their passion lay and have a chat with me, just over Skype typically, and kind of figure out, well, what have you done in the past? So for instance, we had a guy who had done some incredible report systems using the Canvas element. And he just demonstrated the work he'd been doing, and we're like, well, great, we can do some stuff here. So one of the best ways for me to figure this out, and this is something that is applicable to anyone kind of hiring a person or getting them involved in an open source project, is the use of doing a code sample. So all of the 40 or so applicants were asked to provide me with a PHP, MySQL, JavaScript, CSS coding challenge, right? So it will just kind of show me the entire spectrum of their talent. And then it was quite easy for me to go, well, this guy has just done some incredibly amazing, elegant, object-oriented PHP code, but 3 lines of CSS in this example. And then someone else was given the exact same challenge, and would be the other way around. And so when I got it all together, then I could figure out, okay, well, this person can be doing the database abstraction layer, but not the front end. This person here can be doing, say, like an image editing system and all that kind of stuff. So it really helped me choose and match up skill areas, and it was really good actually to have the same challenge posted out to all these people, because then I could kind of compare one to the other.
Yeah, I bet that was interesting.
Yeah.
So the Canvas element stuff. Was there a project that actually used that?
Yeah. So we've got a little similar, like a preliminary example on our site at the moment, but the 2.2 release of SilverStripe, which will be coming out in subsequent weeks, will actually have it inside. You can actually download it in some version right now. So basically what I wanted was a system so that upon our Sapphire framework, You could say, well, look, here is a table of data in the database, or here is a query, or here is an array or an object, these sorts of things. Give me a trend graph, give me a pie graph, those kind of things, so that you are mainly thinking about just getting the data sorted out and in a sort of logical format, rather than how do I make it into a tabular list, or how do I make it into a graph or something like that. So yeah, so we did some really cool things there.
Very cool. So back to the CMS side for a second. Why would someone choose something like Silverlight for building out their website versus something else? What's your kind of niche? Where does it fit into the landscape?
Sure. So I mean, there's two great things about SilverStripe. One is that it works, straight out of the box. So if you're wanting kind of like the defaults, then you don't have to work too far. And it works really intuitively, both for the developer, the programmer who wants to actually extend it, because it's much more modular than systems which are, I guess, even PHP 4 based, which is just kind of, you can't do it so well there. But we've also put a lot of thought and effort into making it possible for the person who's managing the site to do that efficiently and intuitively, because where we got to this point was through a couple of hundred clients and so on actually paying us to make the system. And so we wouldn't be around if the system was not being enjoyed by the different organizations that were using it. So specifically the marketing managers, the receptionists, all these sorts of people who are often in an organization making their website happen, they need to be able to add pages, put in images, all that kind of stuff, manipulate the sitemap without confusing things like templates, or HTML, or anything like that. So we're really trying to abstract it away from how the programmer conceives the whole system to work, and into the heads of, well, I've got a list of pages and I want to just click on that page. I want to be able to see everything about that page, manipulate it, save it, maybe show it to my boss if I need to, and then publish it properly. It does seem to be that if you compare us from other systems, that they go through a much longer and more kind of awkward process to do basic things like adding pages and so on.
Cool. So you made the leap to go to PHP 5 only. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So how's that been? Often when you get to like a new version, people were like, "When do you make that leap?" And how's that affected your project?
Right. So we made the leap to PHP 5 back in 2005 internally, and sort of, I guess to my ignorance, I hadn't realized that a lot of the web hosting infrastructure out there was really still stuck on PHP 4, because we were running our own infrastructure. So when we open sourced it did surprise me a little bit that so many PHP 4 hosts still existed. When we decided to produce SilverStripe back in 2005, we kind of were rehashing a whole lot of old code that we had. And we were basically looking at trying to figure out, okay, well, do we use Ruby on Rails or something like Django or PHP? We figured that for two reasons we really wanted to use PHP. One was that there's a big community of people out there who know it. And the second one is that we knew it intimately well because we'd been using it for for about 5 years or so. Plus, actually, it was still pretty easy to find hosts compared to Ruby on Rails and Python and so on like that. So, yeah, so the PHP 5 decision has been good and bad. I mean, it's been good in the sense that for people who are running on PHP 5 hosts, realize, wow, it's so kind of easy to just do the stuff. I can kind of take a lot of the philosophies embraced by Ruby on Rails to make my coding process much faster. On the same token, we get kind of complaints and so on, saying, "Wow, how do I get this going?" And it's a bit awkward that I can't find my PHP 5 host. So yeah, it's a bit of give and take. But ultimately, we put up a wiki page of different web hosts that run PHP 5, and we point specifically to the ones that seem to be running the latest version. Because if they're running the latest version right now, then in 6 months they'll still be running that latest version, rather than maybe running 5.2 now and for the next 4 years.
Yeah. Great. So if people want to find out more information about SilverStripe, want to participate in the community, where can they go?
Well, silverstripe.com is the best place. So from there you can look at the blog. I put a big amount of effort into, I guess, both motivating and thanking the community members through screencasts and so on. So you can get a really good feel of what all the development work is going on. You can generally see previews of the sort of features that are coming out a couple of months in advance. We have a forum, an IRC channel. We'd really love to see a bunch of people making themes and widgets, which we sort of really more kind of standardized the approach on that quite recently. So yeah, so check it out at silverstripe.com.
Great, thanks a lot. We're going to now go over to the Tiki Hut, and it's kind of ironic to have the American flag there talking to a Kiwi, and maybe we'll crack open one of those Coronas. Thanks a lot.